guys, it's Ty here with Ty the Dog Guy on the Daily, and I want to talk about freedom. Freedom for your dog. Now, this is where sometimes I run into a little bit of like an ideological conundrum. Because not to get into anything political or anything, but I'm a believer in freedom. And it's not that like I think that anyone should be coming and giving it to me. I think that I'm born a free person. But I'm different when it comes to dogs in domestic situations, because a domestic dog does not have the ability to process his surroundings in a rational way unless he's taught how to. And so one thing that I'm fond of saying to my clients is freedom is something that's earned with our dogs. We can't just give them freedom. Now, this takes on a number of different forms, and let me go into a couple or a handful of these different forms and how it kind of plays out with our dogs. For example, most of us want our dogs to have freedom around the house. And when I say freedom around the house, I'm referring to the dog being able, I can sit here and watch TV, I can eat a meal, I can clean my room, I can read a book, and I don't have to worry about my dog. My dog can be wandering the house, right? And so I think most would agree that most of us want our dogs to have a level of freedom like that, to where we don't have to think about it necessarily. They can just wander the house, and they're not going to pee, they're not going to poo, they're not going to chew up our stuff. That with that freedom to roam, they're just going to make good choices, right? Most of us want that. Now, the problem is that many, many, many dog owners start there. They start by giving their dog freedom. And so from day one, they kind of they understand, it's rare that no one supervises at all, but most people are supervising at 60, 70%, and finding that 30, 40% of the time the dog's off pooping and chewing and peeing. Or maybe they supervise a little bit better and it's 90%. I've had plenty of folks over the years come in and say, I'm supervising really well. Okay, then how is it possible that your dog's peeing on the floor? Well, I was making a meal and he was wandering the house. Well, you weren't supervising that well then, were you? Because while you were making a meal, you weren't paying attention to him. And they'll say, I have to pay attention to him. Yeah, all the time. All the time in the beginning, until your dog has earned that freedom, you have to be in a position where there's supervision. And if you're not, then we get what comes with a lack of supervision, and we get what comes with our dog, making choices without our input. When we're not able to give that input and we're not able to tell the dog, hey, here's how I want you to interact with my rug. I don't want you to pee on it or chew on it. Here's how I want you to interact with my couch. I don't want you to chew on it or jump on it. Here's how I want you to interact with my table. I don't want you to chew on the table legs. Here's how I want you to interact with my wood floor. I don't want you to poop on it. If we're not explaining those decisions to our dog, then our dog is going to make his or her own choices and figure out what feels good and what they like. And oftentimes that goes in contrast to what we want. And so it obviously ends up being a big problem. Let me give you another one. This is one I see a lot, and it turns into a big problem. A lot of folks haven't trained their dogs to be off leash. They want this freedom. They want to go down to the lake, drop the boat into the water, and the dog's wandering around and doing his thing. They want to go camping, and the dog's wandering around the campsite. They want to be in the front yard gardening and have the dog just wandering around and hanging out off leash. This is a goal that a lot of people have, and a lot of people want this, right? Now, the problem is that's a lot of freedom. And the reality is very few folks have ever taken the time to train the dog what to do with that amount of freedom. They simply gave it to them. They said, here, I want you to have this freedom, take it. I didn't teach you anything on how to govern this freedom, on how to self-govern. I didn't show you how to respond when you saw a dog and you were off leash, when you saw a bike or a car when you're off leash, or a skateboard when you're off leash. I didn't show you how to interact with these things off leash, but here's that freedom nonetheless. And oh gosh, it just turns into so many issues. I can't tell you how many clients we have that have to come to us because they're walking their dog on a leash and some off-leash dog comes and attacks their dog. And now their dog's afraid or aggressive or anxious or something like that because somebody gave their dog way too much freedom before it had earned that freedom. So these are just a couple examples, but I'm always challenging my clients to think of what those examples in their life are. Because nearly everybody that I've ever met for a first time is giving their dog too much freedom before they taught the dog what to do with that freedom. And again, think about if you did this with your kids. Think about if you never taught your kid how to balance a checkbook, and then he's 18 and you send him off and say, go get a bank account. How's that kid going to know what to do with that freedom of having a bank account? Or think if you never taught your kid to drive, and when he's 16 you hand him the car keys and say, all right, go drive. How is he going to know what to do with that freedom? Now, most of us would look at that and say that's ridiculous that we wouldn't do that with our kids, but a lot of folks do that with their dogs. And so my challenge to you is look at where you're giving too much freedom without the dog having earned it, and look at what you need to do to teach the dog on how to earn that freedom. Sound good?